Hello, and welcome to Reflections. I'm Rom Gayoso, your host. First and foremost, thank you so very much for your being here with me and my guests. I know your time is very important, and I am the guy who will make sure it is invested wisely. Today, we have two guests, and I'm sure it will be a very fun show. Our topic today is business innovation. And I asked two experts in this topic to join us for a discussion. Okay, oh well, everybody's got some rules. So before I get started with the show proper, I need to cover some rules. So let's take care of that first. So this is just a quick reminder. If you're here and live with us, please be attentive to social media platforms' rules regarding the use of chat. So please remember to be nice, polite, and courteous. We all come from different backgrounds and have different perspectives. What is important is to ensure the discussion is civil. And one more thing, there's absolutely no hate speech allowed. By the way, the chat boxes are open, so please take a moment to familiarize yourself with the chat, or it's called a chat box or a chat window, depending on the service you're using. Please do say hi and let me know where you're watching us from. For our podcast listeners and those watching us via Futures Television, please drop a comment on our YouTube page and I'll make sure to say hi. If I appear not to be looking directly at you and the screen, it is because I'm scrolling through the comment boxes. If you can, please type hashtag ask, that is hashtag ASK, in front of your question. So this way I can immediately spot your question and pose it to the guests. There are several ways you can submit a question. Of course, you can use the chat if you're online and live with us. You can also email me a question. Please email it to editor@imcimagazine.com. If you prefer to use the talk to text function, just text your question to 001 for the United States, 480-544-8372. Privacy rules do apply, and I will not save your text or your number. Once it is read, it is deleted. Okay, well, now we can move to the first order of business, which is indeed our agenda. So today we're going to go through a brief introduction. I'm going to welcome one guest, Eugene Ivanov. We're going to have a conversation about innovation. Then I'm going to welcome Manny Teran. We're going to talk about business innovation and trends. I set aside some additional time for us at the end of the show. If you have that last minute burning question, there's more time for you to ask the question. And then towards the end, we're going to talk about upcoming shows. So, I hope to see you again in one of the other shows. All righty. So let's talk about the introduction. Reflections, the podcast, is a partner of IMCI Magazine. You can find us online at www.imcimagazine.com. We are an online publication in the United States under registry 2769-0008. We are a member of Edelweiss America Media, and our focus is on intelligence, so competitive intelligence, market intelligence, economic intelligence. And a good chunk of our work is in foresight, trends, and future studies. So our vision is really to bring diverse perspectives and voices to the debate. What you see on the right-hand side of the screen is the front cover of our most recent issue, and that focus is on openness and inclusivity. So I wanted to say a few words about the topic of the show today. Innovation is really neither easy nor it is free. It is a fruit of very hard work. Today, we will talk about the specifics of what companies can do to create the right environment. One that allows for employees to feel safe enough to take risks. After all, being part of a failing initiative is usually not seen as a career advancing move. Well, let's fix that. Eugene Ivanov will talk to us about that and the in and out of innovation. We will then turn to business trends. We'll hear from Manny Teran on trends, how to spot them, and how to act. We will also discuss the importance of innovation. Well, I guess you get the idea, right? So let's get started. I want to welcome my first guest. So Eugene Ivanov from VOC2, or Wisdom of the Crowds, an innovation consultancy that helps organizations extract maximum value from the wisdom of the crowds by a coordinated use of internal and external crowdsourcing. He is the author of We the People of the Crowd. Eugene's book is available on Amazon.com, and we will have him on an episode of Books and Authors to talk about his book. So stay tuned. There's a lot more about his work that we are going to cover. All righty, so let's welcome Eugene. Hi, Eugene. How are you doing today?
Hi, Rob. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Welcome, and welcome to all the folks who are listening to us from Boston. I'm sorry, Boston. I hope I said that correctly.
Perfect Boston accent, yes.
Okay. So I hope I did not too bad of a job at the introduction. But please, if I miss anything important, could you say a few words about yourself?
Well, yeah, I like to say that I have what people now call non-linear career. I am actually biologist by education. I have a PhD in genetics from St. Petersburg University in Russia. And I spent first like 20 years of my professional career doing pretty much, academic research in some aspect of molecular biology in Russia, then in France and the United States. And then kind of, this straight line of academic research kind of started to move. First, I joined a small biotech company in Cambridge and spent a few years doing drug development. And then I kind of made a very dramatic pivot in my career and went to what people now call innovation management. And I've been doing that for pretty much almost 20 years of my career since then.
So we'll not be talking to you about genetics today. Maybe now I know I have a lot more to ask you on another day.
That's perhaps, yes, for another day, but I'm very welcome to talk about innovation in genetics.
Wonderful. So you are also the founder of VOC2, right? So and that's where you help organizations extract value from crowdsourcing. Could you please tell us a little bit about your work at VOC2?
Well, essentially, it's kind of fancy name. What I'm trying to promote is a view that the crowdsourcing is generally associated with something external to the organization, and there are many spectacular examples of terrific successes in getting wisdom of crowd from outside. But what's very important is that organizations use the wisdom of their employees. And the point of which I'm trying to promote is that you can extract the wisdom of external crowd if you create first a very solid basis of internal innovation through internal crowdsourcing. Again, crowdsourcing is my specialty, if you want. So, but that equally apply to other innovation tools and other innovation approaches. So I like to say that the strength of crowdsourcing, the strength of innovation comes from within. It starts inside your organization. If you have solid foundation, everything else will fall in place. And I help my clients to kind of achieve this synergy.
Oh, that's the importance of your work. So I want to get to the meat of the show today, really. And Eugene, you dedicate a lot of your efforts on innovation, right? So, in your perspective, why? Why is innovation so important?
Yeah, I think that, and that is uh, what I'd like to the viewers of your show to realize, that the our view on innovation, our view on its relevance, our view of importance of innovation has changed dramatically over the past maybe two decades. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30, maybe even 20 years ago, innovation was mostly a competitive tool. So companies innovated to create products, new products and services, to beat their competition, to increase their market share, I don't know, to become industry leaders. Not anymore. Now innovation is a tool of survival. You innovate not to be beaten by your competitors, not to lose your market share, not to be disrupted by young brass startups. Again, it's survival too. And that changed the whole conversation. It creates a sense of urgency. And that's why we hear so much talk about innovation recently. There lies another problem, actually. These talks are not often effectively converted into deeds. And that is something that what troubles me, and that's something that I'm kind of, intellectually very curious about and want to contribute to understanding and advance.
Now, I want to continue along this line of thoughts. So, in your writings, you explain that pursuing innovation is really not easy, right? Not only that, not only is not easy, but you also mentioned that people are often not clear, right? What needs to be done to foster innovation. So people, it's not easy. People are not clear. So could you please explain what is the problem?
Well, there are few problems. One of them, and this problem is kind of manifested in a line you can quite often, unfortunately, hear. In our organization, innovation is everyone's job. And actually, this idea actually popular in organization, even in some kind of academic and business circles. And that's one problem because, well, we all know, everyone who has even basic understanding of how corporation works knows that when everyone is responsible for something, no one is. And organizations don't define what innovation means for them, not what innovation means, for dictionary, for publication, what it means for them, and don't convert this knowledge into some specific program. That's one thing. Believing that innovation is everyone's job, it will somehow happen by itself. And again, that's why it's so popular, because corporate, it frees corporate leaders from actually doing job on defining innovation and creating conditions for successful innovation. That's one problem. The second problem is some innovation tools, and unfortunately, crowdsourcing is one of them, are not terribly intuitive. You really need to understand what it is. And people make many mistakes applying crowdsourcing or what they believe is crowdsourcing, getting wrong results and then claiming, well, wisdom of crowds doesn't work for us. So this kind of lack of focus, this lack of knowledge creates this sometime kind of amoebic feeling of what innovation, of corporate innovation is.
Yeah, so, well, if you say it's everybody's business, it's nobody's business, right?
Well, unfortunately,
It's kind of tough. So lack of focus is one of them. I wanted to change gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you about one of your articles. So I'm going to refer to innovation and failure from words to deeds. So in that article, you mentioned firms often ask employees, to put their careers at risk, by taking part in, failure-prone innovation projects without really assuring them that they won't be punished if the project actually does indeed fail, right? So, can you explain your point?
Yeah, and let me kind of step back for a second. Is that one of the manifestation of this kind of um, innovation paralysis in many corporations? Some people call it innovation theater, some people call it innovation zoo, whatever it is. It's actually one manifestation of that is emphasis on so-called culture of innovation. Now, let me be very, very, very clear. No one denies the importance of cultural aspect of innovation as every human activity. But unfortunately, these talks of creating culture of innovation leads nowhere. And the best what is produced out of that, in my view, is another cliche, and innovation is full of cliches. Is let's let's fail fast and often. And or some organization actually even suggest to celebrate failures. Well, let's face it, in every language, in every cultural and corporate setting, failure is failure. It has negative connotation, and people don't want to fail, especially in corporation and modern corporation, when failure is becoming your part of your track and record. Now you're asking people to spend time, energy, to put additional effort into something, then fail and hurt or ruin their careers for what? And that is where corporations do actually very poor job creating specific condition protecting people from negative concepts of failure. So, in my view, you shouldn't celebrate failures. You should provide your employees with immunity for failed projects. And here I see a very clear, because of my background in academic science, I see a very clear parallel with tenure track position or tenure position in American universities, where people have actually time to do something without evident everyday results, without being without facing perspective of being fired or any other consequences. And so one of the recommendation or which I'd like to suggest is that when you start a strategic innovation project, is that you put people involved in this project on some kind of tenure track position, or at least at a fixed contract position, as opposed to simply employment at will. So people have this fixed amount of time to experiment, to fail without having the stigma of failure on themselves and on their resume.
Yeah, that's a very risky career move, right? So,
And it's very risky career move, right? Right.
yeah. So I want to kind of go back to the cliches that we hear about innovation, right? So we largely hear companies talking about quote promoting risk taking or quote celebrating failures, right? But that's not very assuring or comforting, right? So what is the alternative?
Well, that's what I said. That in my view, instead of kind of celebrate, well, some companies can celebrate failure, but it's you have to grow to reach this level when everyone in your organization can celebrate failure. 99.9% of organization cannot do that. So you again you have to create condition when your employees are not afraid to fail because they have immunity. And that is, again, there are apparently multiple ways of doing that. But in my opinion, creating this kind of, tenure-like position or fixed contract position for people engaged in innovation management is crucial. So you have this fixed amount of time when you immune to any negative consequences of your activity. You will be held responsible, of course, eventually, but you have to have this kind of grace period that you are free to innovate.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the research that you discussed. So, for example, in one of your articles, you mentioned Gustavo Manso and many others, right? So, what kind of guidance can we have to design enough incentives to motivate employees to engage in innovation projects?
Yeah, I was actually surprised that Gustavo Manso, he was back at MIT. He's now at Berkeley, I guess. He wrote an article incentivizing innovation, something like that, back in 2011, and it's a very simple concept. He believed that people involved in innovation activity should have protection from failures short term and incentives long term. So this short term protection actually lets them experiment without feeling and experience negative consequences for their failure. But long term incentives allows them to take and bolder projects with high return, but which take long time. Again, being motivated all the long until the completion of this project. And again, obviously, every company has their own ways to incentivize employees. But again, in my view, long term stock options with long maturities, perhaps the best way for companies, for public companies, to provide this long-term incentive.
Wonderful. So I wanted to kind of ask you along the same line. So, what kind of specific recommendations do you offer for firms that actually do want to promote innovation? So, what are your recommendations?
Well, yeah, it actually starts from the top. There is one recommendation I proposed, which many people consider, pure bureaucracy. I consider to start with creating so-called innovation chart. Essentially, it's a document that spells out what innovation means for this specific organization. Again, I don't want to digress too much, but and there are studies showing that people in the same organization have very different views of what innovation means for the organization, and many of them don't have any. And that should change. Everyone in the organization should know what understanding and innovation means for their organization. That's one thing. Second, and that's my strong conviction that nothing, and I stress it, nothing can be done in terms of innovation in any organization without explicit support and engagement from the senior management, ideally the CEO, president, you name. The other thing, they are very busy people. So innovation charter solidifies their opinions, their kind of their go ahead concept in a written document. And also innovation charter kind of creates the whole sense of creates the common language, and it creates actually permission for people to engage in innovation activities. Again, innovation is, yes, it's everyone's job because everyone should have a chance to do that. But for those who want to get engaged in innovation activity, that's actually your formal go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to change gears a little bit. And in your writings, you talk a lot about the importance of diversity, right? So what is the connection between diversity and innovation? In other words, so why do we say that diverse teams are more innovative?
Yeah, okay. Well, there's this. we have two different questions. But answering to your first question, explanation seems to be simple. Technology becomes more complex. Everything takes more time. So now people take longer time to become an expert in any particular field. It's not often to have someone who is expert in two fields and forget about more. And that's by itself. But the discoveries, the breakthrough innovation happens at the board of different disciplines. By itself, it drives the need of creating multidisciplinary teams. So the concept that diversity of knowledge, experience, skills, networks is important for innovation is nothing new. What is relatively new is a realization that social diversity of gender, race, sexual orientation, age, is equally important in creation of this whole body of diversity. And now, and there is multiple examples of this trend showing that diversity in executive teams, in innovation teams, diversity of race, gender, sexual orientation drives better results. Now, why diverse teams are more innovative? Well, it seems that not only they bring different experience, expertise, skills that is given. They bring different point of view. They bring different perspectives. The presence of outsiders on a team forces team members to reassess their assumptions. It makes life of innovation teams actually more difficult. No question about that. So people have to be better prepared to defend their point. But in this kind of, maybe a little bit tense intellectual discussion, you just get better results.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of go back to one of the points that you made. For example, we have the group culture, right? And then we have the company culture, and then we have the national culture. And then when we talk about, diverse teams, and let's say we're working with people abroad, so they have their group culture, their company culture, and their national culture. So we have like at least 6 different cultures operating at the same time. So and you explain in your writings a lot about the importance of cognitive diversity.
Yeah.
But what kind of advice do you have for companies that not only it's not only diversity within, but diversity without, or diversity abroad? So what kind of advice do you have for companies that actually are multinational and they work with different cultures, different nations and different teams?
Yeah, well, let me come back to this in a second. But what I'd like to say is that so many companies actually realize the importance of diversity, of the social diversity, and they decided to get this diversity, to create this diversity. But unfortunately, it's almost kind of knee-jerk reaction. They created quotes, and so now many tech companies, actually Google, Facebook, I worked for one company that had the same quotes. They publish actually their yearly report on how they achieve diversity. And somewhere they eat, half a point. We now have, 1.2% of more people in this position. Yay! Well, we achieved a great progress. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's long, very tedious process. It will take long time, but organization already have some diversity, actually a lot of diversity, given our global environment, already has a lot of diversity within their ranks. First is cognitive diversity. Cognitive diversity actually is still not very well researched point, but the one that is getting more attention. People with different types of thinking, already diverse, already can bring more to your team. And then we have again cultural diversity and national diversity. Um, I'm not exactly an expert on international aspects of diversity, but I definitely have my own point of view, being essentially, a foreigner in two countries where I worked, in France and the United States. Um, just the good point to start is actually is to learn cultural um, specifics, cultural features of people you work with, and that is being open to other people opinion, being respectful to other people opinion, which is actually nothing new, right?
It's not new, but people don't do it very well. So we have
Well, I,
to.
I'm not saying yes. It's I have a friend, innovation manager, who likes to say, innovation is simple, but not easy. When I'm saying that something is simple, I'm not implying it's easy, but at least we know what has to be done, or we know what has to be tried, or we can try. Let's try it again. And I'm not saying that any of these recommendations will work, but let's try it. Let's stop talking about creating culture of innovation. Let's try implementing very specific, actionable, scalable corporate policies. And if they don't work, okay, well, let's think about something else.
Okay. So I really like your work because you have lots of thought provocative points and questions. So I want to address another one. So I really want to shift gears a little bit and talk about another one of your writings. And you discuss the link between innovation and freedom. What is the relationship?
Yeah. What I hope kind of clear from our discussion is that at a certain point I started kind of to research factors that um, boost or kind of in the country prevent corporate innovation from happening, helps or obstruct. And I created this list. And when I look at these kind of things that especially helps innovation, I found very interesting connection between some of these factors. Essentially, they provide freedom. They are related to freedom, and this. So I formulate as freedom to innovate, and this freedom could be realized at three levels. At individual levels, what we just discussed is a freedom from being discriminated and for whatever reason against. So people should feel this psychological safety. The second level is organizational. People should be free to make mistakes. They should have immunity from failure. And companies actually can do this easily by modifying their termination policies. And finally, there is an aspect which is almost never discussed in the literature innovation, is actually to which extent uh, institutions, political organizations, and customs in different countries promote or obstruct innovation. And I came to this fact a few years ago when I was reviewing a global innovation index. Many people heard about it. And I look at the top of this global innovation index and I said, okay, well, the top of innovation index is full of very well developed democracies. And the reverse was true. When you look at the bottom of global innovation index, you see essentially totalitarian countries there. And then I did kind of more research. So what led me to a conclusion that free countries are better at innovation. Now I understand it's not very easy kind of to implement on a corporate level, right? I mean, you're in the country where you work, but it's still important to realize. And recently, I did some kind of back of the napkin calculation. Essentially, this principle applies to United States too, and so different states innovate differently. And this is actually already close to our internal policy. I'm not going to go too far to that, but when we talk about allocating money to creation of regional centers, it's important to consider social policies that promote or obstruct innovation.
Wonderful. So I want to remain on this point, and I wanted to really ask a specific question about your background and your experience. So the first sentient being in space was Laika, the dog, and the Soviets put Sputnik in the space before anybody else in the world did. So an autocrat government with little to no freedom. So what was their formula there? So is it innovation or die literally? If you don't innovate, I will shoot you. Or what? How did innovation take place in the Soviet Union, an autocrat regime that really has no freedom?
Yeah, well, that's very good topic. First of all, let me make kind of more general consideration. There is no when we talk about factors promoting innovation, there are many of them that you could use, but as in medicine, dose is everything. For example, people, and especially in the United States, people are kind of intrinsically against government intervention. And it's true. There are some examples in this country of government intervention that did terrible wrong to innovation. For example, prohibition of 1920, 1933. And I wrote about that. On the other hand, there are some government regulations that actually promote innovation. I was actually surprised to find that. In fact, government involvement is actually, in many cases, good for innovation. So what we had in the Soviet Union, we had two things. First, we have certain dose of government intervention, and it was actually perhaps good because it was government programs that allowed to allocate huge amount of money on scientific project. And don't forget, Ron, that all of these space programs were funded from defense budget. It was not about exploration; it was about defense or offense. Choose your word. So there is still a lot of money that Russia can allocate, or any other authoritarian country can allocate. China, not a beacon of democracy either, but China has a set of very good programs, especially in the area of artificial intelligence, that allowed it actually become the second country in terms of developed artificial intelligence after the United States. So again, you can buy, if you want, buy your place on the top of innovation index. Singapore is not a beacon of democracy. It's one of the most innovative countries in the world. Hong Kong. China is not bad. However, it's my true belief is that only when you have a free people capable of doing things that they like, and they have government on their side, that when actually you can extract the full potential of innovation on a personal and corporate level.
Wow, how wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Eugene. It's always great to speak with you. I mean, just as a reminder, he will be back to Books and Authors to talk more about his book. So we didn't talk about your book here, but we will on Books and Authors. So we're just scratching the surface here, folks. So just a moment. I wanted to make sure you guys see this. So again, folks, his book, We, the People of the Crowd, is available on Amazon.com. Please also visit Dr. Eugene Ivanov's blog, innovationobserver.com. You'll find the link to the book and to the blog on the comment section of this video. So, Eugene, again, thank you so very much for your taking the time to speak with me and the audience today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
And I hope to see you soon. Well,
I hope
I will see you soon. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Okay, folks. So let's transition a little bit. So my next guest is Manny Teran from Spark Partners. He is dedicated to preparing leaders and entrepreneurs to think and execute like innovators. He is the co-host of the Business Trendsetter podcast. You can find many shows on sparkpartners.com. The show is really fabulous. I love it. I strongly recommend it. So please check it out. I will leave the link to Manny's podcast in the comment section of this video. So Manny is also an entrepreneur in his own right. He is the CEO of SAA-OX, and his product, Respiro, is a novel helium oxygen respiratory assist system designed to help treat patients with respiratory conditions. Well, in addition to that, he's also an industry partner board member of the University of Arizona in Tucson. So let's welcome Manny. Hi, Manny. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Ram. Pleased to be here. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts and your ideas with the guests and with the audience today. So I hope I didn't do too bad of a job at the introduction, And
no, thank you very much. It's very, very succinct and to the point, which I appreciate.
So please say a little bit more about you and your background.
Sure thing. So I'm actually an engineer by education, and very early in my career, I transitioned from being strictly the quote unquote engineer, and I went into sales and marketing. So what's called the dark side, if you're an engineer. And spent my first 10 years in corporate America with building sales teams. And I was also a sales guy. So I have a lot to offer regarding what it takes to make a sale, and was working with companies that were one person in their garage all the way up to companies that had 10,000 or more employees. So in that time, I got a taste and flavor of what innovation really is at the ground level. And I was fascinated by that and have been dedicating my life here the past 3 or 4 years to both Spark Partners and SIOX. So I feel that I need to, I drink the Kool-Aid that I make, and I apply what I know with SIOX. And as such, we've been growing very quickly.
Wonderful. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Spark Partners. So what is your mission? Tell us a little bit about Spark Partners.
Sure. So our mission is really to develop leaders who create lasting business success. So what that means is, if you can imagine an entrepreneur that might have had a lemonade stand as a kid, or was selling candy as a kid, and maybe graduated into other sales activities or other innovation type activities. What we're doing is we're taking the core essence of what innovation is, and we're bolting it on to leaders. It's really important, as Eugene said, it's really important that the leadership they have a fair amount of understanding of how innovation works. And we do that through our courses, through our coaching, and through our content. So we have a course called Think Innovation that we deploy to everyone from a person who has an idea, doesn't even have a company yet, all the way up to executives and directors at Fortune 500 companies, and everything in between. And then with our coaching, it's very, very specific. We don't do a lot of it, but because we want to make sure that we bring on the right kind of mindset. And, Ram, it all starts with the mindset. It all starts with the person. and how they see themselves. Because at the end of the day, if you're not taking action, you're just creating a hobby. And at the very, very last part of that with Spark Partners is we do have a podcast called the Business Trendsetter Podcast, where we talk about topics related to trends, innovation. We try to get away from politics, but sometimes it does enter the conversation. But as my partner Adam Hartland, and I say, at the end of the day, it's irrespective if you're on the left, the right, the middle, wherever it might be, there's going to be trends and business activity that you need to pay attention to if you want to be relevant in today's market.
So in your trainings, in your writings, and actually in the podcast, you talk a lot about, understanding the customer, but apparently entrepreneurs in general don't do a very good job at, understanding the customer. So can you tell us a little bit about, so why is it that people don't really understand the customer?
Ram, it comes back down to a fair, heavy dose of ego. 9 times out of 10, the reason that they don't really understand their customer is because they don't really want to listen to what the customer is saying or what the market is saying. Oftentimes they fall in love with their own product or service to the point where they say, well, I can't believe nobody wants to buy this. Or why are our sales going downhill? And at the end of the day, unless it is something that is a trend, unless there's a significant value in what you're providing, people aren't gonna really gravitate towards that. You've probably seen this little toy in my example. This is a Sony Walkman from when I was a 15-year-old. Actually, it's kind of an antique. And back in the day, this was amazing. This had the auto rewind. This had even a radio built in. It's waterproof. And I always say, if you were to activate all the salespeople in the world, if you had a magic button, you push the magic button, all the salespeople would wake up and you would command them to go sell this, you would get basically no sales. You might get some sales for nostalgia, but nowhere close to what Spotify or these other services are providing, because it's no longer there's no value in it beyond what's already out there. And entrepreneurs, you'd be surprised, or maybe not, of how hell-bent they are on pushing their own agenda or product or service. Now, there is a balance between really understanding their customer and looking beyond their needs. So Steve Jobs was very well known for this. Or even the example that is used quite commonly regarding Henry Ford. If Henry Ford was to ask his customers what they wanted, he said they would say a faster horse. So obviously he went beyond that to provide a deeper value in really what happened is he, created the automotive and the assembly line and really took that to the next level. But it really stemmed from the true needs and desires of the customers, which required 2/3 listening to the customer and that other 1/3 of being able to look beyond what they need.
In fact, I think this is seen very common in high tech. Make it, and therefore, they will buy it. And there are always 2 cultures in there. One is to listen to the customer, and the other say, no, we'll make it, and they will buy it. Right? Well, it's okay. Correct. So I wanted to change gears a little bit. And so you do talk a lot about trends in your podcast, right? So why are trends so important in business?
So you can really, I think everybody's got a fundamental understanding of what trends are, but they don't pay attention to them the way they should. And if you can imagine, you have got a canoe and you put it into a fast flowing river and you're going down river. It's going to be easy for you to get far, fast, and with not a lot of effort. If you take that same canoe and put it into a swamp, into this still pond, you're going to have to really use a lot of force to get across to the other side. That's the way we talk about trends. Trends is the market. That's what's happening. Things are moving in one direction or maybe bifurcating, but they're moving in a direction. And if you fight a trend, it's going to be difficult for you to really make a lot of headway. And so the counter of that is, of course, if you're put your canoe into this still water of a swamp, you're going to have to do a lot of activity to get engagement, to get to remain, or at least show that you are relevant, even though you might not be. And it's a tremendous amount of work. Aligning to trends, keeping your eye open to what they are, and making an effort to really to watch them, to track them, and ultimately to share them with your team so that you're aligning with where things are going, not to where they are today.
Okay, so I needed to clarify something else. So some things are trends and some things are fads. So what's the difference between a trend and a fad?
Yeah, so that's a question we get asked quite a bit at Spark Partners. People see something and they start to gravitate and they say, well, this is a trend, so I'm going to take my life savings, I'm going to put it into cryptocurrency, or some of these other things that are sort of buzz right now. And what we say at Spark Partners is you need to be really understanding what are the sort of certain elements that support that fad or trend, whatever's in question. If you look at and I'll use cryptocurrency because it's a bit of a polarizing, I think most people, we'll say a third of the people are like, yep, absolutely great. A third are like, nah, and a third are just don't even know what it is yet. But ultimately, the scaffolding that upholds cryptocurrency, for instance, is not quite as stable as people think it is. This recent week, you saw, last week, you saw a significant dip in Bitcoin and others, and the scaffolding isn't there yet. So a fad is something that comes in and has a propensity to just go through because there's no scaffolding, there's no foundation. And right now, cryptocurrency, in Adam's opinion, is 100% a fad. In my opinion, I'm still watching to see what happens. If you remember what happened maybe 6 months ago when a certain Central American country decided to really adopt the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, of course, we're talking about El Salvador down there, and they had a huge dip in their entire GDP, and the way that their economy worked is now being upended because of these decisions, because there's, again, no scaffolding. So scaffolding is the number one thing, or a foundation that separates a trend from a fad.
So folks, what is really the beauty of the work that Manny and his team, that what they do is explaining to you the differences. So do listen to the podcast and the training, so that you don't get involved in all those pyramid schemes, or you don't fall for the fads thinking that, oh, this is a trend. No, that's not indeed a trend. It is a fad. But I want to continue on this topic of trends. So I'm going to ask you, what are the major trends we should be aware of as business executives and entrepreneurs? What do you see out there?
Absolutely. So first thing I'll say is there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of trends that are happening right now in the world. It could be a regional trend. It could be a trend in your particular market. And so we really want to look at the top trends as indicators. So we actually have a report called Trend Report 2030. It's free and available. You can just email me at manny@sparkpartners.com and I'll send it to you. And I'm sure that Ron will put the link up. But that report is 66 major trends in the world from now until 2030. Now, there are 5 major trends that you absolutely need to be aware of and keep your eye on and see how your business is actually mapped out to those trends. So the first, of course, is the topic of a lot of conversations, and that, of course, is AI, artificial intelligence. That's massive. Secondarily, we have mobility. So I'm sitting here with this device, my phone, which has the ability to do so many things. I can be on some Aruba, taking Zoom calls, checking my stocks, moving money around, having whatever. I can do it all because of this mobility. The third of which is the gig economy. So the standard W-2 9-to-5 kind of jobs being shifted over to the contractor working for myself modality. And there's things are happening like crazy right now in these 3. The fourth is asynchronous life. So the ability for me to send a text message, come back in an hour, get a response. The ability for me to do a little bit of work and then serve that up to somebody in Pakistan to finish my work. All these things, both work and life, asynchronous is definitely massive. And then the newest, I wouldn't say newest player, but the one that we actually graduated to the top 5 now is is demographics. The shift in demographics in the age of population, where people live, how people work is massive. I'll give an example before I'm interested in your thoughts, Ram. The country of Japan, the country of Italy. Those countries I am fascinated by both of those countries, by the way. And the thing about each of those is because of their extremely low birth rate, they are in for a bit of a cultural Armageddon. This is one thing that people don't want to talk about, but it's there. And it's there in the next 15, 20, 25 years. There's going to be a significant collapse in these markets, particularly Japan. Japan, for a while, it was and still remains a powerhouse of manufacturing. You know, they kind of go between 3 and 4 with Germany, but they're top 5 for sure. If you can imagine in 20 years, right now, there's 1 in 4 people are retired or within 5 years of retiring. In 20 years, that's going to be closer to 1 in 3. And then in 30 and 40 years, it's going to be 1 in 2. So there's going to be a lot of retired people and not a lot of younger people to do the work.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting topic. So, for example, if you think about Germany, one of the things that they did in recent times, so I'm saying in the past 5 years, or Angela Merkel's government, was to open the door to immigrants. So they're mostly young. So there has been a real culture shock in Germany because of so many people of different cultures moving in. But at the same token, what they were thinking is exactly what you said. So we talk about the graying of America, but there's the graying of Japan, the graying of England, the graying of Germany, and etc. So they're saying, well, maybe that will work. We don't know. It's a truly a social experiment. So we'll see what will happen, but they did something about it. Will it work? Don't know. How well it work? Don't know. But at least they're trying something. Now, you mentioned so many trends, right? And thank you so much for sharing the report. I will add the link to the report in the comment section of this video. But it's probably not easy for people to identify trends, right? And so how can people keep an eye on trends? What's your advice? And there are so many.
There are so many. But as I mentioned, you really want to keep track of these major ones, and you want to take your business. And the reason why this report is so functionally important and why you can actually use it as a live tool with your team, if you have a executive team, or if it's just you, or if it's whatever your dynamic is, if you take your product or service and compare it to those 66 trends, you'll be able to see where you can map what you do, whether it's product or service, to these certain trends. And there is this kind of goes both ways in both what you provide to the world and how you take what's out there in the world and provide it into your team. We've had several podcasts on the idea of the gig economy or using mobility. There's lots of companies right now that are, especially because of the pandemic, that are struggling with the fact of, okay, do we bring people back to the office or do we let them continue working from home? And there's a shift. There's a lot of things that sort of bubbling in the background. So that's a major trend that's actually has to do with asynchronous life as well as mobility. And so you need to consider both what you can provide the world and what trends are going to be impacting you. And it really takes if you go back to what I said initially about, it takes a hard look at yourself. Now, remember that the entrepreneurship mission, the business executive mission, the business leader mission always starts with the I, with who you are before you look outward into your mission, into whatever you're doing. Because if you're not ready, if you're not asking yourself, who do I have to become today to be who I have to become tomorrow to do your mission, then it goes moot. I work with entrepreneurs, high performing entrepreneurs that are building these amazing teams. And what always brings them down is not the market, not customers, not their HR issues, not money, but usually it's themselves. They hit a speed bump, they hit something happens, and they start to really look at themselves and think, do I really want this? And that's when the sweater begins to unravel as they pull that string out. And certainly it all starts with the individual.
Wonderful. So folks, one thing why I invited Manny here. So him and his partner, Adam Hartung, actually have a different interview with Adam. I invite you guys to watch it as well. So the work of Spark Partners, it's amazing. It's not because, we talk to people out there, they talk about the fish, but you guys actually teach people how to fish. And that's the most important thing. So not just, the business, Trendsetter podcast plus the training. So you guys do a lot of hand holding, but that's, I think, the importance of your work is not just, coming in as a consultant saying, oh, there's a trend. Well, yes, but this is how you spot, and this is how you act, and this is how you monitor, and this is what you do about it. And so, folks, this is very important stuff, and that's why Manny's here today, because I think we as business people, we have to focus, we have to pay attention, and we need someone like Manny and Adam and Spark Partners to kind of hold our hands and kind of show us the way, help us focus. So as a follow-up to that, so about focusing and teaching people how to fish, I want to ask you about competition, right? So in your perspective, why is it important to keep an eye on the competition? You say keep an eye on trends, but keep an eye on competition.
Yeah, it's very important to keep an eye on the competition. So let me be very clear to your viewing audience here and your listening audience that keeping an eye on competition doesn't mean you're going to follow your competition. It doesn't mean that you venerate or you worship them. It just means that you're aware of what's happening. And it's very healthy to keep an eye on the competition. But you need to really change the perspective from not just a two-dimensional view, but a three-dimensional and four-dimensional view. And let me explain what that means. So where we've seen, and by the way, I didn't say this earlier, but the bulk of the philosophy and content that Adam and I are leveraging for what we're doing is a massive case study that Adam and his team, when he was at Harvard, started, and then Adam continued, looking at 12,000 companies to see why most fail and very few succeed over the long term. And so that's kind of where this comes from. And not only was it a intellectual exercise, but it's been a practical exercise because between Adam and I, we've added $3 billion of value to the companies that we've worked with. But let me take that question with respect to, competition comes in many forms. And competition, especially fringe competition, is what usually knocks something off of the top seat. Blockbuster, Netflix. We're talking about Pizza Hut, Domino's Pizza, and all the other things, right? And so if you are a pizza company, I'll just use that as an example, a potential but not really seen and really considered competition is DiGiorno pizza, right? Because if a family buys DiGiorno pizza and they pop it in the oven, they are not going to go out to Pizza Hut or they're not going to order Domino's, right? But it's even beyond that because competition is not just two-dimensional like pizza chain or pizza chain, but it's three-dimensional. So even the fast food restaurants are competition to Pizza Hut. So they really need to look at beyond what they do and have that, again, three-dimensional view. So for your listening audience here and your viewing audience, Ram, you just really need to compare where the dollars go. If you are selling a widget of some sort, what are the alternatives that people can actually buy instead of buying your stuff? And then make it a point, create a Google Doc to track all the competition that can have any sense of communication with your product or service, and pay particularly close attention to the fringe competitors, because those are the ones that are the most dangerous. It's not going to be the Coke, Pepsi, Chevy, Ford communication. It's going to be the Coke, Pepsi going to be upended by sparkling water like Topo Chico or these other ones. It's not going to be the Chevy, Ford conversation because things like Tesla are going to start to create buzz for it. So you got to look outside of your box to that 3- and 4-dimensional space that I mentioned.
Wonderful. So you mentioned, that research that actually Adam did, right? And I want to kind of go there. Okay, so I want to explore this other topic. Not everything is bright, not everything is wonderful, right? So in your experience, where exactly do most entrepreneurs and business executives fail?
They fail by, it's kind of it's a mirror sort of conversation. Part of it is internal. They see the train coming and they're sitting there on the tracks and they don't make a move because it's comfortable. So comfort is among the most deadly, detrimental elements for an entrepreneur or a business person. Comfort. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's absolutely true. And I'll explain in a second. And then the second thing is just, and that's tied to the same thing, is a lack of connection with customers, the true connection. And then the third is people are drowned. They usually drown early with success. When you make lots of money and when you're doing very well, you tend to, in essence, make a lot of mistakes. And because you've got revenues, you're doing okay. But once things slow down, because you've created this sort of giant machine, it's hard for you to pick up. And I have the perfect example for you that'll crystallize everything. It's one of my formerly favorite companies when I was growing up, and that is, of course, Sears. Sears is the poster child for those three things: for comfort, for losing touch with their customers, and for being drowned in their success. In 2001, 2002 timeframe, where e-commerce was starting to peek out of the foxhole, it was coming out into the world, and they knew about it. So did another gentleman by name of Jeff Bezos, knew about it too. And Jeff really started thinking about what's happening here and started aligning all that he did in that domain. All the while, Sears was comfortable, didn't want to shift, was making lots of money. And by the way, that's all kind of pride, right? Because, we're Sears, man. We are literally anchor tenants to malls. When are malls ever going to go out of style? Ha, 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 right? Here we are 22 years later, and there's less than 50 Sears stores left. By the end of this year, they're likely going to close almost all of them. And then by 2023, they'll for sure be dead.
Yes. So ego, comfort, those are the maybe the one of the or two of the seven deadly business sins. It's very, very interesting that you name all of them. Now, so what is the single best or most important thing you should do in business? What's your advice?
Well, there's a reason why we have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth, right? You want to really listen to your customers and not just listen through. Here's the thing, and this goes back to what Eugene said earlier and what you said earlier, is building a really diverse organization, especially on the strategy side. So when you listen to your customer, it's just not coming from a 6'3" Hispanic man, right? It's coming from all walks of life. And the more you have this diversity, the better the message to the true sense of the world you're going to get. So you absolutely need to listen to your customers, truly listen, even beyond your own ego, challenge each other. The second thing is you want to keep an eye on trends. You want to absolutely keep an eye on what's happening in the world, and not just in your little micro world of Arizona or, wherever you might be, Massachusetts. You got to look at the big world, because things that happen across the pond, either direction, will have implications. I don't know if you remember, about 10 years ago, there was some crazy giant sandstorm in Mongolia, in China. And 5 days later, that sandstorm had an effect on our weather here in the US. It's crazy, but it's all connected. And of course, now with mobility, asynchronicity, you get these connections, boom, it's almost instant, some of these repercussions. So listen to your customers, keep an eye on your competition. And then lastly, with your voice, you need to make sure that your customers and the world at large understands your message, understands your value, We haven't talked a lot about value, but value is very important in describing what the customer will gain. We love the word gain and not get. If I buy this coffee here, what I get is black coffee. What I gain is pleasure and comfort, maybe a little bit of a caffeine boost. It's warm because it's cold outside. That's a different conversation than what I actually get. So change your vernacular to, instead of anytime you start talking about customers or your value, change it from get to gain, and you're going to start to see a more rich, deeper exploration of what the customer really wants.
Actually, I see a book in there, From Get to Gain.
There it is.
I certainly see that. Well, I couldn't let you go without asking you about innovation, our topic today, right? So to you, what is the importance of innovation?
Innovation is really the engine that drives the market. Innovation is all about giving customers what they want in new and better ways. And there is a stratification of all sorts of flavors and incarnations of how innovation is put to place. Again, to reference Eugene's conversation with you, and your question, Ram, was very interesting regarding the former Soviet Union and the space race and the arms race, and what innovation really was for them was it came from a different place. It came from the central state, and it was sort of a top-down approach. Well, if you look at innovation from the bottom-up approach of a very shy, kind of weird, pre-adolescent kid from South Africa that decided that something wasn't really working in his life and came and created himself into who we know now as Elon Musk, who is an intrepid innovator, who is a very demanding innovator, and who drives innovation at almost all costs. I value and respect him a lot as an innovator, but the way his business practices are, as far as his employees, people I know that work for him, it's a different story. He's a hard driver, but he has a mission, and there's nothing that's going to hold him back from that mission, including being married. I don't know how many times he's been married. It doesn't matter. His mission is number one and will always be number one. And that mission is obviously split into kind of three ways, but he wants to put people on Mars, right? He wants to bore holes inside of and underneath cities, and he wants to ultimately create an electrification of our automotive domain. So innovation, don't think of it as a singular color. It's not just a yellow. It is a kaleidoscope of colors. Innovation comes in all forms. It comes in the way a restaurant serves its meals. It comes in, in all forms. Like Uber is a great example of a true innovation. Uber is basically a dating app, right? You have people that want to ride, and you have people that can give you a ride. So they built this essentially a little app. They sprinkled a little bit of insurance and business framework on top, and then they poured a bunch of money into this framework. Boom. Innovation isn't always technology, and you just have to open your eyes to the different colors of innovation.
Well, not sure how to thank you. This is so wonderful, Manny. Thank you so much for your being here today with me and the audience. So again, folks, please check Manny's podcast, Manny and Adam's podcast, The Business Trendsetter. It is really filled with great information, very important discussion on trends, and you actually can find how to get more training on trend spotting. So check it out. Thank you so very much, Manny. Wonderful,
thank you, Ram. Appreciate it.
To Cheers. Have you here. Cheers. So, folks, really, when I have people like Manny and Adam or Dr. Ivanov here, they're here for a reason, because these people actually have a message. They are not empty words. They will teach you the step-by-step approach with very specific sets of instructions. So that's what we really need. We don't need people that come in and blah, 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 their way in and out. We need people like Manny, Adam, and Dr. Ivanov, who can actually help us get from zero to where we need to be with innovation, with trends, and most importantly, with education. So again, thank you so very much, Manny and Dr. Ivanov for being here with me and the audience today.
Thank you.
All righty. So, folks, I think it's time for us to start with our thank you very much again. So, I could ask a boatload more questions of our guests, but I'm afraid I really can't ask for more. I really, again, want to thank Eugene and Manny for being here. And I really hope to see them again soon. Well, not so fast. Remember, Dr. Ivanov will be back to Books and Authors to talk about his book, We, the People of the Crowd. So again, folks, Eugene's book is available on Amazon.com. Check it out. And the pieces Trendsetters.com podcast is also online. So please check them out. I really want to thank you so much for being here again with me, my guest today. We have some wonderful shows coming up. But again, it's now time for me to say my goodbyes. You can reach out to me via Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Please, if you're watching us as a recording for the podcast or recording of the live stream or via Futures Television, you too can be part of the conversation. Leave me, the guest, a note on our YouTube channel, and I will make sure your comments and questions get to my guests, and they will be addressed promptly. So I will leave you with our institutional message. Thank you.